Hallelujah. Well, at this time, we want to have our history bit today. And our history bit is going to come from a book, an old book, mind you. I would consider the book to be old. It was published in 1756. The name of the book is called The Critical Review or Annals of Literature, Volume 57, by a man named Tobias George Smollett. And we're going to read from page 141. Now, before I read this piece of information here, I do want to preface it with saying that this reading that I will present has to do with helping to provide a more accurate historical picture of the Judean Israelite. Now, in the modern era that we are in today, most of the Western world, when they hear the word Jew, Judean, or Israelite, because of the imagery that has been presented either in media, by films, movies, pictures, we get an image of the Jew primarily being someone that is of white-skinned, dark-haired complexion, in particular the Eastern European. While many within the framework of what is considered to be Jewry would say that you have the Ashkenazim Jews and the Sephardim, which would be considered the Mediterranean Jews. From the standpoint of those who are considered to be Jews, that appears to be the major representation in the modern era. So when one sees a Jew, from this representation, they think that a Jew is white. This is just the truth. And so, from a historical perspective, it's important that we provide information so that the record can be made straight, so that the record can be accurate. Now, for those of my brothers and sisters who are not melanated, who are not of color, who are white, whom I love and whom I embrace, it is important that despite the present media depiction and representation of the Jew or Judean or Israelite, it is important that we listen to the record of history, because the record of history has greater witness and evidence to the truth of things in comparison to a visual image of the modern era. And so it's important that we be mindful of that. And I must also say this, that in the modern era, Judeans or Jews come in all colors, and they come from all different stocks of people in the world, because they have been scattered from Israel throughout all the nations. But when we begin to talk about the Hebrews, the original Hebrews, and we talk about those that were in the land of Israel before the scattering, we have made it very plain that they originally are a melanated, dark-skinned people. That's their origin. And so in this piece that I want to read today, it's going to talk about the Portuguese Jew, or maybe I should say it as the reading presents it, the black Portuguese. So in this reading, I'm going to read from page 41. And for those of you who would like to obtain this particular book, it's in the free domain. Again, it is the Critical Review or Annals of Literature, Volume 57 by Tobias George Smollett. Now, reading from page 141, right? Mind you, this was published in 1756. So that means we're going back a couple hundred of years, right? We're going back a little bit. And this is going to give us a picture of the Portuguese Jew. Let me read. It says, the Portuguese endeavored to exclude other nations from Guinea, whilst the rest of the European navigators were, in spite of papal bulls and all the reports, industriously spread of the pretended dangers of that coast, striving to get a share of that profitable gold trade. The discovery of the Gold Coast served indeed yet more to enlarge the sphere of the navigation of the Portuguese than their slave trade, but it forced them also to extend themselves on the coast and to settle colonies in Congo, Angola, and other places which they had till then neglected. Prince Henry's colonies were enlarged by his successors. King John II, in 1492, expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas. And I want you to hear this part. I'm going to read this part again. This is very important, which part I will be sharing on and expanding on. King John II, in 1492, expelled all the Jews to the island of St. Thomas, which had been discovered in 1471, and to the other Portuguese settlements on the continent of Africa. I'm going to pause right there for a moment. The other settlements that were Portuguese settlements in Africa, as was mentioned above, are in the Gold Coast, Congo, and Angola. So if you were to go to West Africa, and if you were to go to the Gold Coast of West Africa, that's that portion there where you have Guinea, what's called Guinea. Also, you have the region of what is called the Ivory Coast as well, all right? And you also have the land that is now called Ghana, just as well, that part of West Africa. And as you continue down a little south, just a little south, you have Angola and the Congo. These were areas that the Portuguese had settlement. It says that they expelled the Jews, this in 1492. They expelled the Jews from Portugal to these areas, along with the island of St. Thomas. Now I'll continue. And from these banished Jews, the black Portuguese, as they are called, I'll repeat that again. The black Portuguese, as they are called, and the Jews in Loango, who are despised even by the very Negroes, are descended. So this piece of information, it's primarily discussing in the broader framework of what has been read. It is discussing how slave trade was going on among the European nations, and the Portuguese began their own colonization in Africa, in those countries in Africa. They did not want the other European nations to get down in there and be involved in what they were doing. Okay? They wanted to have a monopoly. All right? But while they were there, what we discover is that these Portuguese that were banished, Portuguese Jews that were banished, were called the Black Portuguese. I find this interesting because if you were to watch a movie that depicted the beginning of slave trade or the expulsion of the Jews from Portugal and Spain, because you know Portugal is right next to Spain. You all know that, right? Right next to Spain. The same time that the expulsion of the Jews occurred in Portugal, it's the same time the expulsion of the Jews occurred in Spain. But what has not been told to us in the modern era is that these Portuguese Jews were called the Black Portuguese. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this out is because I want to draw attention to the fact that the Judean Israelites, while they have been depicted in most instances as being white, no offense to my brothers and sisters, but I'm just sharing historical truth. They were black. Now, what happens is that when we do not have a proper image, when we see something and it has been propagated on a large scale, we begin to believe that image because a picture, it imprints itself in our mind. Amen. But when we become informed from history, as I said, this book was published in 1756. And this is what they called the Jews of Portugal, the Black Portuguese. They had been expelled to St. Thomas, the Gold Coast, the Congo, and Angola, based upon the information that we have. So, when we deal with the original Hebrews, and when we talk about them being a people of color, and how in our modern era, if someone calls themselves an Israelite and they are a person of color, they are considered as being someone who is either a convert, as some would say, to the Israelite faith, but they could not at all be considered a blood descendant Israelite because of the present image in the modern era in which we live. And so this piece of history, it helps to shed light on the truth concerning the Judean Israelites, who they were, what they looked like. Because many of us here in the United States of America who come from the peoples that were enslaved in those same areas where the Portuguese had taken slaves are not aware of the fact that they are of an Israelite stock and heritage. And so I trust that this information that we shared today has helped to illuminate us in our understanding historically of these Portuguese Jews, and that it will help broaden our awareness of the house of Israel scattered all over the world. The Most High be praised.